Dr. James Parker trudged through the corridors of Meridian's Gate Station, his mind still processing the data from today's xenobiology samples. 12 hours in the lab, 3 breakthrough observations on Centauri genetic markers, and approximately 400 reasons why he needed sleep. He was fumbling for his door access when he noticed someone waiting outside his quarters, a Velrani woman who stood with the bearing of someone used to command and the careful stillness of someone trying not to alarm. "Dr. Parker," she said, her translator converting Velrani formal address to human standard. "I am Counselor Sira Talvares. May I speak with you?" James blinked, his tired brain trying to process why a high-ranking Velrani diplomat was standing outside his modest station quarters. "Counselor, yes, of course. Is this about the cultural exchange program I submitted my report on? This is personal." Sira's ears tilted in what James had learned was uncertainty or distress. "It concerns my daughter." James's confusion deepened. He'd never met Sira's daughter, had no connection to Velrani family politics. "I'm not sure how I can help. She's been asking for you." Sira's voice carried quiet urgency. "For 3 days now. She calls for the kind man and Dr. Parker and won't be comforted by anyone else. She's growing more distressed, and she paused, her composure cracking slightly. "I don't know why she needs you specifically, but I trust my child's instinct. Please, will you come?" James should have asked more questions, should have demanded explanation for this strange request. But something in Sira's expression, the careful control overlaying genuine maternal concern, convinced him. "Of course. Let me he gestured at his lab coat. "Let me change into something less contaminated with biological samples, and I'll follow you immediately." 5 minutes later, they were traversing the station's upper residential section, the area reserved for diplomatic personnel and visiting dignitaries. Sira walked with purposeful grace, but James noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her ears kept tilting back with worry. "Your daughter," James ventured. "What's her name?" "Kira. She's 7 in your years, 6 in ours." Sira glanced at him. "Do you remember meeting her? She described a human with kind eyes who helped her when she was scared. When she gave me details, I searched station records and found you." James tried to remember. He interacted with a lot of people in his work, station personnel, research subjects, visiting scientists. Velrani children weren't uncommon on Meridian's Gate, but he couldn't recall any specific encounter that would warrant this. "I'm sorry," he admitted. "I meet a lot of people. Can you tell me more about when this happened?" 3 months ago, there was an emergency, a cargo bay depressurization alarm. She says you found her when she was separated from me, that you stayed with her until I could reach you both." The memory clicked into place suddenly, vividly. The alarm blaring, people running for emergency shelters, and a small Velrani child pressed into a corner near the science wing, crying with the kind of terror that only comes from being lost and alone during chaos. "I remember," James said quietly. "She was terrified. I couldn't just leave her there." Sira stopped walking, turning to face him with an intensity that made James take a step back. "You stayed with her. During an emergency when you should have been seeking your own safety. You prioritized her well-being over your own survival instinct. She was a scared child. Of course I stayed." James said it like it was obvious, because it was. "I told her she was brave, that I'd stay with her until her family found her, and I kept that promise. You arrived maybe 10 minutes later, and I made sure you had her safely before continuing to the shelter. You handed her to me, assured me everyone was safe, and then left before I could thank you properly." Sira's ears were doing something James couldn't interpret, tilted forward with what might be awe or disbelief. "I searched for you afterward, but I only had kind human scientists to work with, and the station has hundreds of researchers." It seemed like a small thing at the time, just basic decency in a frightening situation. "To you, perhaps. To my daughter," Sira resumed walking, but her posture had shifted to something almost reverent. "Dr. Parker, What you did creates what we call the guardian's mark. In Velrani culture, when someone protects a child at cost to themselves, especially in life-threatening situations, that person becomes recognized as the child's guardian. Not legally, not like adoption, but culturally significant. Deeply significant. James processed this. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to create any kind of bond, I was just helping a scared child. Which is precisely why the bond is genuine. You didn't help her expecting reward or recognition. You helped her because it was right. That's selflessness. It's what creates the guardian's mark. And my daughter, Kira, she feels it. She's been asking for you because the bond recognizes you as her guardian, and she doesn't understand why you aren't present. She's 7. Does she understand cultural bonds? Velrani children are more emotionally intuitive than human children. She may not understand the cultural framework, but she feels the connection. She trusts you in ways that can't be explained logically, only emotionally. Sierra stopped at a door that opened to reveal elegant private quarters. She's been inconsolable. I've tried everything: comfort, distraction, explanation. Nothing works. She needs to see you. James felt something shift in his chest. Responsibility, perhaps, or the weight of mattering to someone he barely remembered meeting. Then let's not keep her waiting. Inside Sierra's quarters, the environment was distinctly Velrani. Lower lighting than humans preferred, furniture designed for their elongated proportions, walls decorated with art that emphasized geometric patterns James had learned represented family lineage. In the center of the living space, a small Velrani child sat surrounded by drawing materials, her long ears drooping with obvious distress. The moment Kira saw James, everything changed. Her ears shot forward. Her eyes, large and expressive in ways that transcended species, widened with recognition and relief. And then she was running toward him with the uninhibited joy of a child who'd been waiting for something essential. You came back, she cried, her small arms wrapping around James's legs with surprising strength. Mama said you would, but I was scared you forgot me. James knelt automatically, bringing himself to her level, and felt the full force of her emotional relief wash over him. I didn't forget you, Kira. I've been here the whole time. I just didn't know you needed me. I needed you lots. I was sad and scared, and nobody understood why except Mama, and she tried to explain, but words don't help when you feel sad inside. Kira pulled back to look at him, her small hands gripping his shirt like he might disappear. You're my guardian. That means you protect me and I can trust you forever, right? James glanced at Sierra, who nodded with gentle encouragement. Yes, that's right. I'm your guardian and you can trust me. Good. Kira's distress evaporated like it had never existed, replaced by excited chatter. I have so many things to show you. I made drawings and I learned a new counting system, and Mama let me try human food yesterday, but it was too spicy. Do all humans like spicy food or just some humans? And I want to know about Earth because Mama says that's where you're from originally, and I've never been to a planet that's all water and land instead of mostly rock. The words tumbled out in the enthusiastic stream of a child who'd been holding in questions and thoughts for too long. James found himself smiling despite the overwhelming information flow, responding to her questions with the patience his research had taught him, careful explanation, genuine interest, treating her curiosity as valid rather than childish. Sierra watched from the doorway, her expression mixing relief with something deeper that James couldn't quite identify. After 20 minutes of questions, drawing presentations, and Kira's extensive explanation of her favorite educational programs, the child finally seemed satisfied enough to let James breathe. She curled up beside him on the floor where they'd been examining her art, her small body radiating contentment. I knew you'd come if I asked, she said sleepily. Guardians always come when you need them. That's what the stories say. That's right, James agreed, though he was still learning what being a guardian actually meant. Kira's eyes were drooping. the emotional exhaustion of 3 days' distress catching up now that her guardian was present. Within minutes she was asleep, still holding onto James's hand. Sierra approached quietly, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't seen her this calm in days. She's a remarkable child. She is, and she recognized something in you that took me longer to see." Sierra gestured toward a sitting area away from the sleeping child. "We should talk about what this means. About the guardian's mark and what it implies for all of us." James carefully extracted his hand from Kira's grip. She murmured but didn't wake, and followed Sierra to the adjacent room. "The guardian's mark," Sierra began once they were settled, "is recognized across Velrani society as a profound bond. It gives you certain rights and responsibilities in Kira's life. You're not her parent, I am. But you're recognized as someone she can call upon, someone who owes her protection, someone her family honors as chosen guardian. I didn't choose this. I just helped a scared child. The choice was in the helping. You chose to stay when you could have sought your own safety. That choice created the bond." Sierra's ears tilted in what James was learning to read as earnest emotion. "Dr. Parker, James, I don't resent this bond. I'm grateful for it. You saved my daughter when I couldn't reach her. You stayed with her during her terror. That's not a small thing. That's everything a parent hopes someone will do for their child if they cannot. You said it gives me rights. What rights? To be involved in her life if you choose. To attend her important events, to provide guidance, to be called upon if she needs help and I'm unavailable. You have standing to speak on matters concerning her well-being, though final authority remains with me as her parent." Sierra met his eyes directly. "But these are rights you can exercise or decline. The bond exists regardless, but your level of involvement is your choice. And responsibilities, to honor her trust, to protect her if she's in danger and you're able, to not betray the bond by harming her or abandoning her callously." Sierra's expression softened. "But you've already demonstrated you're capable of these things. I'm not worried you'll fail her." James looked through the doorway at Kira sleeping peacefully, her small form completely relaxed in ways Sierra said she hadn't been for days. He thought about how her face had lit up when she saw him, how her distress had vanished the moment her guardian arrived, how she'd trusted him immediately and completely. "I've never thought much about having family," he admitted. "I've been focused on my research, on my career, haven't made space for much else. Family isn't always planned. Sometimes it finds you when you're not looking." Sierra smiled slightly. "Kira found you, or perhaps you found each other 3 months ago in a moment of chaos. Either way, the bond exists now. The question is what you want to do with it. What does Kira want?" "She wants her guardian. She wants you to be part of her life, to be someone she can count on, to be present for the important moments." Sierra paused. "But she's 7. She doesn't understand that you have your own life, your own priorities. I understand that. I won't demand more than you're willing to give." James thought about his quarters, empty, functional, filled with research materials and little else. Thought about his life, productive, meaningful in the academic sense, but isolated in ways he'd convinced himself were necessary for focus. Thought about a small Velrani child who'd called for him for 3 days, who trusted him completely, who'd recognized something in him that he hadn't known he possessed. "I'd like to be involved," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I don't know what that looks like practically. I've never been a guardian before, but I want to try." Sierra's expression transformed into something between relief and joy. "Then we'll figure it out together, you, me, and Kira, a family by circumstance and choice." "Family," James tested the word. "I like that." From the other room came a small, sleepy voice. "Is my guardian staying?" "Yes, little one," Sierra called back. "He's staying." "Good," came the satisfied response. "Can he stay forever?" Sierra looked at James with a question in her eyes. James thought about forever, about watching this child grow, about being someone she could count on, about building something he'd never planned but couldn't imagine refusing. "Yeah," he called back to Kira. I can stay. Over the following weeks, James found himself visiting Sierra and Kira's quarters with increasing frequency. What had started as obligation, ensuring Kira was comfortable with her guardian's presence, had evolved into genuine anticipation of time spent with the small family he'd accidentally become part of. Kira was endlessly curious about everything. She asked questions about human biology. Why do humans have so little hair compared to other mammals? Earth geography. Are the oceans really so deep you haven't explored all of them? And James's research. What makes genetics work? Like, how do tiny things know to make bigger things? Each question was asked with the earnest focus of someone who genuinely wanted to understand, not just make conversation. James found himself explaining complex concepts in simple terms, breaking down his research into digestible pieces for a 7-year-old's comprehension. And surprisingly, Kira understood more than he expected, her young mind grasping patterns and connections that some of his graduate students missed. She's brilliant, James told Sierra one evening while Kira was absorbed in building something elaborate with educational construction materials. Genuinely brilliant. Her cognitive flexibility is remarkable. She gets that from her father, Sierra said, her voice carrying the gentle sadness that always accompanied mentions of Kira's other parent. He was a researcher too, died when she was 3. Accident during a survey expedition, equipment malfunction. She barely remembers him. I'm sorry. Thank you. It's been 4 years, but some days it feels recent. Sierra watched her daughter with visible affection. I've been raising her alone since then, trying to balance diplomatic work with parenting. It's been. She paused, searching for words. Challenging, knowing I'm her only parent, her only foundation. The cargo bay incident, being separated from her during danger, it was my worst nightmare. But you found her, she was safe. Because you stayed with her, because you chose to prioritize her safety over your own. Sierra turned to James. Do you understand what that meant to me, finding you both, seeing that she was calm despite the chaos, knowing that a stranger had cared for her when I couldn't reach her? That's not something I can easily express. You thanked me that day. You thanked me and made sure I knew she was going to be fine. And then you left before I could say anything more, before I could understand what you'd done in terms of our culture. Sierra's smile was slight. I spent weeks trying to find you, asked station personnel about kind human scientists who helped during the emergency. Got dozens of names, none of them right. And then Kira started asking for you, describing you, and I finally had enough information to search properly. She never forgot. Children don't forget people who make them feel safe in terrifying moments. That safety it imprints. For Velrani it creates the guardian's mark, the cultural recognition of what happened between you. Sierra's expression turned more serious. James, I need you to understand something. This bond, it's not trivial in our society. When Kira starts school next year, when she attends formal events, when she reaches coming-of-age ceremonies, you'll be expected to attend as her guardian. People will ask about you, will assess you, will judge whether you're worthy of the bond. That sounds stressful. It can be, but it also means Kira has someone beyond me. If something happens to me, accident, illness, political complication, she has you. You're recognized as someone who can advocate for her, protect her, ensure her well-being. Sierra met his eyes. That's a significant responsibility, and I need to know you understand the weight of it. James looked at Kira, who'd abandoned her construction project and was now reading a datapad with the intense focus of someone completely absorbed. He thought about the emergency 3 months ago, about the scared child he'd refused to abandon, about the calm he'd felt knowing she was safe. I understand, he said, and I don't take it lightly, but Sierra, I'm human. I don't fully understand Velrani culture, don't know all the protocols and expectations. What if I make mistakes? Then I'll help you learn. And Kira, she doesn't care about protocols. She cares that you're here, that you keep your promises, that you make her feel safe. Sierra's smile was warm. You're already doing the important parts right. A month into regular visits, Kira had a school performance, a presentation on cultural exchange that she'd been preparing for weeks. She'd invited James with the expectation that of course her guardian would attend. Why would he not? James found himself sitting in a small auditorium beside Sira, surrounded by Velrani families, feeling distinctly out of place as one of only 3 humans present. When Kira took the small stage, her eyes immediately found them, specifically found James, and her whole demeanor brightened. She presented her work with confidence, discussing human and Velrani cultural differences with insight that impressed the educators watching. And when she finished, she pointed to the audience and announced proudly, "That's my mama and my guardian. They helped me with my research." Several Velrani families turned to look at James with obvious curiosity. Sira leaned over and whispered, "Welcome to Velrani family politics. You're now officially interesting." After the performance, multiple parents approached to meet the human guardian, asking questions about how the bond formed, expressing admiration for James's protection of Kira during the emergency. Their curiosity was polite but intense, and James found himself explaining the cargo bay incident multiple times. Kira stayed close to him throughout, her small hand periodically grabbing his to ensure he wasn't going to disappear. When one particularly formal Velrani asked whether James was prepared for the long-term responsibilities of guardianship, Kira interjected before he could answer. "Of course he is. He's my guardian. Guardians don't leave." The simple certainty in her voice silenced further questions. Later, walking back to Sira's quarters with Kira between them holding both their hands, James felt something shift in his understanding of his own life. He'd built a career on careful planning, on controlled experiments, on knowing the variables. But this family he'd stumbled into wasn't controlled or planned. It was messy and emotional and required improvisation. And he was surprised to find he didn't mind, actually liked it even. "You did well today," Sira said, "handled the curious families with grace. I felt like I was being evaluated." "You were. Guardian bonds are rare enough that people pay attention. They wanted to assess whether you were worthy of my daughter's trust." Sira's smile was slight. "I think you passed." "What about you?" James asked. "Do you think I'm worthy?" Sira stopped walking, turned to face him with an expression of complete sincerity. "James, you saved my daughter when I couldn't. You stayed with her during her terror. You've shown up for her consistently since reconnecting. You attend her school events, answer her endless questions, make her feel valued and safe. You've already proven your worth beyond any doubt." Kira tugged on both their hands. "Can we get dessert? The performance made me hungry and I want to celebrate with my family." "Family?" Sira repeated softly, her eyes meeting James's. "Yes, I think dessert with family sounds perfect." As they continued toward the station's food district with Kira, chattering excitedly about dessert options, James realized that the small act of kindness 3 months ago had given him something he hadn't known he was missing. A place to belong, people who chose him, a future that included more than just research and solitary achievement. He'd found a family, or rather a family had found him, and he was grateful for it. 6 months after Sira had first appeared at his door, James's life had transformed in ways he was still processing. His quarters now contained Velrani educational materials that Kira had convinced him to study, so we can do homework together. His schedule included regular family dinners, and his emergency contacts list had Sira at the top, not because protocol required it, but because she'd become the person he'd call if anything went wrong. The Guardian's mark had evolved from cultural obligation to genuine relationship. It was during one of their regular dinners that Sira brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. Kira was occupied with dessert, giving them a moment of semi-private conversation. "I've been offered a diplomatic position," Sira said quietly. "Significant promotion. Better compensation, more influence, opportunity to shape interspecies policy." She paused. "It's on Earth." James felt something complicated twist in his chest. That's a major opportunity. Congratulations. It means leaving Meridian's Gate, relocating for at least 3 years, possibly longer. Sierra's eyes held a question she hadn't yet voiced. It means disrupting Kira's life, taking her away from the station she knows, the schools she's comfortable with. And it means taking her away from her guardian. When would you leave? 3 months, enough time to prepare, to transition, to make arrangements. Sierra's voice carried careful neutrality. I wanted to tell you immediately because this affects you too. The guardian bond doesn't break with distance, but practical reality is that if we're on Earth and you're here, you can't be present for Kira's daily life. James looked at Kira, who was happily cataloging the molecular composition of her dessert in a way that made him smile despite the serious conversation. What does Kira think about moving to Earth? She's excited about the opportunity but devastated about leaving you. She asked if guardians can come with you when you move, and I didn't have a good answer. What do you want? James asked. Not what's diplomatically advantageous or what's expected. What do you actually want? Sierra was quiet for a long moment. I want this job. It's everything I've worked toward professionally. But I also want my daughter to be happy, to have her guardian present, to maintain the family structure we've built. Those wants are in conflict, and I'm struggling to reconcile them. Have you considered that they might not be in conflict? James heard himself say. My research work is portable. Most of what I do is data analysis and lab work that doesn't require this specific station. If there's a xenobiology position on Earth, and there are several institutions that would value my expertise, I could relocate too. Sierra's ears shot forward, surprise. You would move, leave your established position here, uproot your life just to maintain proximity to Kira. Not just to Kira, to both of you. James met her eyes. Sierra, over these months you've become more than just Kira's mother to me. You've become a friend, a colleague, someone I value beyond the guardian bond. And yes, Kira matters enormously. She's brilliant and funny and has made me care about things beyond my research. But you matter too. If you're going to Earth, I'd like to be there as well. That's a significant life change to make for people you've known less than a year. I've known you both long enough to know I'd regret not making the change. James smiled. Besides, Kira would never forgive me if I let her guardian abandon her because of something as trivial as planetary distance. Kira, who'd apparently been listening despite her apparent focus on dessert, looked up with shining eyes. You're coming to Earth with us. Really? You promise? I promise. Guardians don't abandon their charges just because planets change. Kira launched herself from her chair into James's arms with the full-body enthusiasm of a child who'd gotten exactly what she wanted. This is the best day. We get to stay together and I get to see Earth and you get to meet Earth animals and Mama gets her important job and everything is perfect. Over Kira's head, James met Sierra's eyes. She was smiling, but there was something deeper in her expression. Relief, gratitude, and something else he couldn't quite name. Later, after Kira had gone to bed still chattering excitedly about Earth, Sierra and James sat in her quarter's small observation area, watching stars drift past the station viewport. Thank you, Sierra said quietly, for choosing to come with us, for making that sacrifice for Kira. It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice that makes me happy. James paused. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you first came to my door, when you asked me to see Kira, were you afraid I'd refuse, that I'd reject the guardian bond? Terrified, Sierra admitted. Velrani culture recognizes the bond, but you're human. You didn't grow up with these traditions. I thought you might see it as strange or invasive, might want nothing to do with obligations you never asked for. What made you ask anyway? Because my daughter needed you. Because denying her that connection would have hurt her more than your potential rejection. And because, Sierra turned to face him, because I saw how you'd cared for her 3 months ago, how you'd stayed when you could have left. That kind of character doesn't usually reject responsibility, even unexpected responsibility. You trusted me. I trusted who you'd proven yourself to be. Sierra's smile was gentle. And you've proven that trust well-founded every day since. The Guardian's mark, James said. In Velrani culture, does it ever evolve into something else? Does the relationship between guardian and parent ever become more than just co-parenting? Sierra's ears tilted in what James had learned was careful consideration. Sometimes, when the guardian and parent develop genuine connection beyond the child, when their partnership becomes valuable independent of their shared care. Why do you ask? Because I've been thinking about it. About you. About how much I value our conversations beyond Kira, how much I appreciate your perspective on interspecies relations, how much I enjoy your company even when Kira isn't present. James took a breath. I don't want to complicate things or make you uncomfortable, but if we're going to Earth together, building a life in proximity, I wanted you to know I'm interested in exploring whether what's between us could become something more than just cooperative parenting. Something more, Sierra repeated, her voice carrying an emotion James couldn't identify. Only if you're interested. I'm not pressuring, James. She stopped him with a hand on his arm. I've been thinking about it too. About how much easier parenting has been with you present, but also how much I enjoy your companionship independent of Kira. How much I look forward to our conversations. How much I value your perspective. How much I've come to rely on your presence in ways that transcend the guardian bond. She smiled. I think exploring something more would be wonderful. Complicated, certainly, but wonderful. Complicated. You're human. I'm Velrani. There are cultural differences, physical compatibility questions, political implications given my diplomatic position. People will have opinions about a human and Velrani in relationship, especially when a child is involved. Sierra's expression was serious but not discouraged. But we've already navigated the complications of the guardian bond. I think we can handle this too. Together, James said. Together, Sierra agreed. 3 months later, James stood in a transport bay with his entire life packed into manageable luggage, preparing to relocate to Earth with Sierra and Kira. Several of his colleagues had expressed confusion about his decision to uproot his established career for what they saw as vague family obligations. But standing beside Sierra while Kira bounced with excitement about their coming adventure, James felt only certainty. He'd saved a scared child 6 months ago, thinking little of it at the time. That single act had created a bond recognized